Well, it's a shame we have nothing to talk about on this edition of Mountaineer Report. Well, we actually have a lot to discuss, which is why we are going to try for the first time on this show to go live. So if you're listening to this after the fact, you may be a little confused since it's a technical live broadcast here of Mountaineer Report. Mike Asti, and now joining me, first time on this show, back with us at WVU Sports Now, Cody Nespor. You did see Ethan Bach still in the graphic there at the beginning. He may see him in some other graphics still. We're working out the graphic king, but Ethan Bach has moved on. So now Cody Nespor gets to pinch hit and be part of Mountaineer Report. And I already see we have some viewers because Cody's debut show comes with breaking news of the day. Jordan Lesley is now out as WVU's defensive coordinator. They do it on the bye week. No, not because of the billboards. They do it on the bye week. This kind of has been in the works for a while. And it was the domino that I think we all were expecting if there was going to be one. Neil Brown has released a statement. Everyone has been writing about it and talking about it. And the defense didn't get any better in Arizona, despite the team actually getting a win. So, Cody, I already see we have some chat activity, but before we get to that, I just will give you quickly your initial reaction to Jordan Lesley being fired, kind of a brunch morning into the afternoon news dump on a Tuesday for the program here after Neil Brown's press conference. They definitely waited until after that thing, but Lesley is out as DC.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. Obviously the timing is so that Neil didn't have to talk about it yesterday.
Right.
To me, nobody should be shocked by this move, and I think, looking at it in hindsight this morning, this is a move that probably comes 2 years too late.
Sure, you could argue
that. Because it was after the 22 season when they severely underperformed. Neil didn't make any changes, and then you win 9 games last year. So you're like, okay, well, why would we make changes now? Right. And then now, obviously, the bottom has fallen out, and it's a big problem. But like I said, that's in hindsight. At the time, you say, well, do you fire the guy after one bad year? And then when you win 9 games, it's like, well, you don't want to fire anybody now.
Yeah.
But then obviously this season has happened, and so it's, like I keep saying, with hindsight.
It's obvious. We all like to throw hindsight on there, in our analysis.
Nobody should be surprised. I doubt anybody is surprised that this happened this week. They're probably surprised that it took this long.
Yeah, and of course the sentiment has been throughout the entire year. Even the people that maybe wanted to continue with Neil Brown, because obviously most of the fan base now is out on Neil Brown, but even the fan base that wanted to keep Neil Brown, they were all out on Jordan Lesley. So this entire year, really since the Penn State game, even though obviously that's a top 5 program, the fan base has been out on Jordan Lesley, feeling like that's the problem. As we both know, and you were at a lot of those press conferences with me the last several years with your previous job, that Neil Brown was open to say that he banged on the table to defend his guys, and that's why the defensive staff stayed intact after 22. And that really, without saying by name, was really Jordan Lesley. He was Jordan Lesley on down. He made it very clear that he fought to keep them. And then, as you mentioned, there were some defensive lapses, but they won 9 games. Yeah, they took advantage of a little bit of an easier schedule, but the defense pretty much single-handedly won the 2023 backyard brawl. Nico couldn't move the ball, and they got 80 yards on offense for most of that game. So when all of that occurs and you have a consensus All-American that is a transfer that Jordan Lesley helped recruit, and Beanie Bishop has been open, that's defensive staff from Jordan Lesley, and somebody else that we're going to get to in a moment here, and Shadon Brown, helped in Beanie Bishop's molding, and now he has 3 picks in the NFL and looks like, a defensive rookie of the year candidate and a Pro Bowler. When all of that occurs, you're not going to fire the guy, but then you go into this year, and the defense has just been so. Even in wins, the defense has not looked good. Now, we do have some chat activity here. Wild Tuesday, to say the least. Tuesday, I do feel like, is generally a boring day, but also my least favorite day of an average week. And this one provides us breaking news. So how does Lesley's firing change the way this defense plays moving forward? So for me, Cody, before I go to you, I will caution everybody that I'm not sure it could change it at all that much. I mean, all of these assistants have learned under the Lesley tree by now even if Shadon Brown, who I was alluding to, gets removed, that feels like the next domino to fall here. Jeff Kuhns is now going to be the DC the rest of the year. He's still somebody that's learned under Lesley. Maybe Brown's more involved, but he got more involved in the offensive play calling because he's done that prior in his career. He's not really a defensive play caller. So if Jeff goes to him and says, I don't feel comfortable calling plays, he doesn't want to do it with Shadon. I don't think Andrew Jackson, anyone else is ready to go to do that. And I don't think Brown even feels comfortable calling defensive plays. So I would be tempted to think it's going to be similar, maybe a little bit better because they just get motivated, realizing their backs are against the wall, and they do have a little bit of a defensive pass rush now. But as they've also both been saying, and that's Lesley and Brown, they can't change the personnel. So maybe they messed up in the portal recruiting, unlike a year ago. And for me, if I had to bet, it's going to be similar. I mean, Lesley go, but it's going to be similar. How about you?
Yeah, I think the most that you would see, it's going to be simplified, right? Because Kuhns isn't going to come in and try and install a bunch of new stuff.
Yeah.
And Lesley ran a multiple defense, 3-3-5, 4-2-5, with all the hybrid positions. I'd be willing. My assumption would be that they come out against Cincinnati. It's a lot simpler. It's probably less personnel groupings, more just, you're in this spot and you're going to do this stuff, and we're all going to work out of base. We're going to be in base, or we're going to be in nickel, right? Because that's halfway through the season. You can't install a bunch of new stuff, in 1 week or in 2 weeks. So
they have a little bit of time now.
Yeah, but I expect it to be a lot simpler. And then I think unless, because Kuhns was a co-defensive coordinator at Cincinnati,
right?
He would be the only guy that has even maybe ever called defensive plays,
right?
Because Shadon Brown has never been a co or a defensive coordinator before. He's always been just the secondary coach.
Well, he's been technically co on the WVU staff.
Well, that's until now, but we know we know here that Lesley has called the plays.
Yeah, so even when Shadon, as I said to you, a text message once this announcement came out, even when Shadon was co-DC officially, and we would be there press conference, he would get announced as the co-DC. It was almost a move. It almost felt like that was a title just to be nice. There was no point of that. He wasn't calling plays. When you get beyond assistants and two coordinators, really, once the season starts, you don't hear from Shadon again. There's no interviews with him. It's just Lesley. A true coordinatorship, which we have seen college programs do. The NFL has done that, whether it's successful or not. We've seen people do that. You then would release both men to the media throughout the season. One maybe would call plays. The other one would be in charge of something else, or they both would be part of plays. That's not what WVU did with Shadon Brown. So, it was basically in name only.
Well,
so, you're probably right.
I think it was a title thing because it's like, offensive line coach Matt Moore is the associate head coach. And that's one of those things, like, what does that really mean? And when, Lesley is DC, what does co-DC mean? Right.
Especially because they're not both co-DC.
Right.
Leslie's
exactly.
DC, the other one's co-DC. If they were truly both if they were both co-DCs, they would both be that's really getting technical, but they both would be We're semantics maybe to them, but to us, it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're probably, Jeff Kuhns probably is the only one who's done that before. And I'd imagine that Neil Brown's going to have his hand in the cookie jar more. But again, this is not like when Graham Harrell was let go because of the disappointment, or he moved on, whatever you want to believe there, after 2022. And Brown said, okay, I'm just going to do it. If I'm going down with the ship, calling my plays. I don't think Brown can really do that with the defense. And if he does, then that's just probably spelling disaster. I mean, that's not, it would then be that nothing else is left. Were you at all surprised, because we've been talking about it, that Kuhns ends up being the DC the rest of the season? Obviously, Shadon has kind of puttered away from that title. So, and when the secondary is so bad, it would be hard to give it to him. I think the fan base would erupt and nobody would be at the games. But there are other defensive coaches. Jackson, again, has been with him a while. I don't see him doing it either. I guess, does that make sense to you?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I think it would even be tough to name Shadon the interim because there's no other secondary coach, Like
True.
he's not corners and Dante Wright is safeties anymore. It's just him.
Yeah, they brought in Victor Cabral to do linebackers and really double up the linebacker room, but no second. Yeah.
So you promote Shadon. Now you're down a set. So I think Kuntz is convenient. Somebody in the chat said, is he convenient or easy or both? I think it's both.
Okay, I was good.
Right,
yeah.
like he's kind of the most experienced guy, and he's probably also the easiest to move off of his specific position group.
Yeah.
The question I have, which is he's also technically still the special teams coordinator.
He is.
I assume somebody's going to do that, but I asked WVU, I guess, official this morning, and he said for right now, that's not changing. But I assume, I assume even if the title doesn't change, somebody else is going to handle it.
I actually asked that too because I was wondering that because I was like, that is just too much work. Yeah. I mean, that's just, especially when you're getting into a position where clearly they got to try to win some games here. Yeah. It's high pressure, and this is going to be the first time you're doing it as the lone guy. Like, there's not another real like, oh, you're it. That does seem a lot of work. The only benefit, I guess, in this regard now for him is the special teams has not been the problem that it was a couple years ago, because the ironic twist of this, if you recall, in addition to banging the table to keep Jordan Lesley 2 years ago, many people were out on Jeff Kuntz at that point. So now he's still there, and he actually continues on beyond Jordan Lesley, as ironic as that might be. Mike Asti here, Cody Nespor, our WV Sports Now Mountaineer Report live reaction. Jordan Lesley being fired out as DC earlier today. I see a lot of next man up. I do see, easy choice or best choice, probably a little bit of both there. I'll throw this out there, kind of what Pete brought up. The defense blew a 10-point lead versus Pitt with 4 minutes to go. You mentioned how maybe this should have happened a couple years ago, and obviously 2023, after Brown argued for him, allowed him to stay on. This made sense for everybody kind of in the know because of this bye week, but this is the second bye week, to be fair to the fans. They did blow the game against Pitt. They did allow a lot of points there. They allowed a lot of points to Penn State. The defense has been bad. The secondary has been bad, especially all year long. If you give up the 2022 and 2023 argument and you just focus into this year, when maybe should they have done that this year to maybe help this season? Could he have been fired earlier in the season for you?
Well, I think Neil is not reactionary.
True.
Right? Neil is not quick on the trigger, especially like his assistants are his guys, and he gives them the benefit of the doubt every time. So it's the first bye week was after Kansas, right? Because Pitt, Kansas bye. And up to that point, the defense hadn't been good, but like knowing Neil, he's probably still sitting thinking like, let's give it 4 more weeks, right? Like
they just won too, just kind of like this past week,
and it's like
Kansas,
Like I said, I mean, these are his guys. He's been fiercely loyal to not just his assistant coaches, but his recruits too.
100%,
right? I mean, that's just kind of who Neil is. So I'm not surprised he waited this long. That's like I said, that's just kind of who Neil is. He's always going to give these guys the benefit of the doubt. And I'm
and honestly, Lesley was really his guy. I mean, Lesley was like the top guy. If you're talking
the guys that were with Troy with him are like, so it's
right.
I mean, that's why I don't even think, even if it wasn't like someone who's been with him for 10 years, I don't think Neil would fire somebody after 4 weeks, because it's just, like I said, he's not reactionary. He's not quick trigger and make big changes kind of coach.
Yeah, and if you're one of them, if you're working for a coach, which is why coaches come and go and they always rave about Neil Brown either way, you probably do like that.
Yeah.
I mean, this is also why Neil Brown, when or if he's removed at WVU, he's going to find a spot on another staff, even if he's not a head coach right away. Maybe it'll be even best for him to go to a big-time program, kind of do the Lane Kiffin thing, be an assistant under somebody who's real legit, win a lot of games, and learn under them. I've said that too on past shows. That might be best for Brown, and then he'll get another head coaching job. But he'll easily get those opportunities. Like, he is very well liked in the coaching community because of things like what you're saying. That he's not going to pull the trigger. He's going to promote if he can. I mean, Chad Scott went from being running back coordinator to being the offensive coordinator at a Big 12 major program. I love Chad Scott. You could argue that with Brown calling plays and Chad not having much experience with quarterbacks, that maybe was a little odd at the time. but the players loved it. And we also will see, it's not for this show. I've already discussed it, and we'll discuss it maybe on another show, that we're going to see Brown's loyalty again when it comes to players, because now he's going to have a quarterback decision to make in the midst of this bye for that Cincinnati game. I already asked him about it. He doesn't want to make that decision now. Green's not fully healthy, but if he gets healthy, he's going to have a QB making mistakes who's his incumbent, who he loves and has groomed for years. And if he benches him now, his career is basically done.
Yeah.
So that'll be I think that, again, Brown's a real good guy no matter what you think of him as a coach. That'll be an emotional decision for him if he does go to Nico. Anything else here in the chat? I think Jeff can definitely change things up. He has done a pretty good job on special teams. I don't know if that correlates, though. I mean, he does, and he was willing to change some things, to his credit, for when the special teams was bad to now that it's been solid. Anything for you as him as a coach in general that you think that maybe he can get in the room and say, look, Neil, this defense has been so bad we had to fire Lesley. I want to change some things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's just confidence with Coons, right? Like,
yeah,
like you said, the special teams are a lot better. The coverage teams especially are a lot better. He's been more so than any of the other defensive assistants. He's been at the Power 5 level, Power 4 level. He's been trusted with the special teams his entire tenure here. So I assume it's a confidence thing, and I don't. I assume Neil's just going to give him the keys, for the most part, because like you were kind of saying, Neil's not a defense guy.
Yeah.
I even in an emergency, I assume Neil can't call a defense.
He's not going to want to either. I don't.
Right. So I really kind of assume it's going to be like, and like I said earlier, like, okay, Jeff, here's what we're going to slim down everything. We're going to go base and we're going to go nickel, and that's it. And I don't think they're trying to come out and say, okay, we're going to run a 3-4 now. And, even if, but I would, I assume until we hear Neil talk about it next week, I assume Jeff Coons just kind of has the keys to do what he wants.
Yeah. And they made this announcement, as you said, intentionally after Neil Brown's press conference following the Arizona game leading into the bye week. And now he's going to talk next Monday, but we're looking at almost a full week of fans going wild on social media, a lot of reports, a lot of speculation, a lot of rumors, national and local media, all before Neil Brown's going to talk to us. And the statement we just got, nobody's getting anything else from Neil Brown until Monday.
Well, so is he doing his radio show this week or not, since it's bye?
Yeah, during the bye, not normally. So he does normally. Now, the press conference that happens on Monday is not a different thing. He normally does those on buys. The radio show, I would imagine, is not going to happen. He's going to hold some practices, as he said on Monday, and they're mostly going to do recruiting and then get back to work for Cincinnati on Sunday. So maybe it'll be a longer show with Tony the week after. But again, nothing against Tony. He has to do what he has to do. Generally speaking, the way Neil Brown works may be different than Holgerson and how those shows used to be. There's nothing new from that radio show. Like, outside of an injury update, it's almost regurgitating the press conference.
Right.
Cody Nespor, Mike Asti here, WVU Sports Now. We're reacting to Jordan Lesley being fired. He is out. Do you think, because I know obviously the pulse of the fan base is now, they all want, even with this decision, they all want Neil Brown gone.
Yeah.
After the Carolina Bowl game, after the Duke's Mayo Bowl, the joke was that somebody put out there that he went from the hot seat to the Mayo seat. And I think the fan base went from maybe 100% out after 2022 to maybe 70% were like, okay, we're being reasonable. Now we'll buy in. It took them some time, but here's 9 wins. It should have been 10, 11, etc. After Penn State, it went down to 50. After you blow the Pitt game, it was probably, 10% at best. And right now it might be at 0 in terms of who wants Neil Brown to stay on. With that said, that doesn't mean the program's getting rid of him. There's other things complicating that scenario. He could easily still be back. Do you think this decision impacts the decision to bring him back at all? Or is this decision appeasing anybody, appeasing the fan base? Is this just because the defense has been bad? What does this do to Neil Brown's future, or is this independent of it for you?
No, I think because we've heard this was Neil's decision. This didn't come from on
100%.
top. So I think this is a straight up football. The defense needs to be fixed move. And how it affects Neil's future is their next 4 games are favorable, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
They are.
they're going to be favored or even in all of them. It's crazy to think if they win out, big if they win out, they're 8-4 again, and
Be the
it's
same damn year, yeah.
but then nobody would feel good about an 8-5.
No, you wouldn't. As even though you didn't have big wins against major programs the year earlier, you had the brawl win at least.
Right.
Like there wouldn't even be the brawl win.
So it's like I think it feels to me this was a straight up football move to get rid of Lesley, and it's like if they go 4-0 or if they go 3-1, finish the year, go to the bowl, beat a power opponent, it's like it's not a terrible year.
No, it's just the way they did it.
Yeah,
and then Neil can argue the schedule thing because that'll be 11 Power Fours when a lot of teams didn't play that. We've been annoyed by having to write about and hear that from him for years now, but it's also true. So like, if you finish, I mean, if this hypothetical scenario occurs and they went out and they beat all programs similar to them and then they win a bowl and they have 9 wins again, back-to-back 9-win seasons is not a common thing in the Power Four anywhere outside of Bama and those elite programs. And he'll have more Power Fours on the schedule than everybody else. He could argue, and I think in that scenario, I think we probably both would agree Neil's definitely coming back then. Because it's like, why are we trying to raise money at that point? But the fans would still be out, and I could certainly see the argument of still being done with Brown in that scenario, but it's unlikely still.
So insofar that this move affects Neil's future, I think is just the next 4 games. Because I mean, with Lesley here or not, what happens the next 4 games is Neil's future. So that's why I think firing him was just a football move. Just Neil saying, and like his it's a canned press release statement.
Yeah.
But he did say this puts us in the best position moving forward, and it does.
Right. I mean, you haven't been in a good position prior, so like this should be a better position. I'll ask that too, because we both our sources and everyone out there kind of you heard from Neil, heard from other reporters. This was a Neil Brown decision. This was not the conspiracy out there that Ren Baker went in the office, kicked the door down, and said, "Neil, you got to get rid of Jordan, or else we're not going to continue with you." Like those rumors out there on social media are just not true from what anyone's been saying. But I will ask you, because we also know that a source can be legit, but a source, can also not be believed by the fan base because they're so out on the situation now. Do you buy that this is 100% Neil Brown going to Ren himself in their continuous meetings and saying, I don't believe the defense is good enough. I'm friends with him, but I want to move on. And then Ren says it's on you. Go ahead and do that. Or do you think Neil was in any way had his arm twisted and was forced to do this?
In the same way I was talking about Neil, I don't perceive Ren as that kind of AD.
Not at all.
So that's and here's another thing. I said I think this is a straight up football move. Neil's not stupid. Like
he
knows what's going on. He knows what people are talking about.
He does. He says he doesn't go on social media. He knows 100%.
I mean, you can't. And then, so he knows how something like this is perceived. He probably knows how the fans felt about Jordan. So that's, I mean, what I know about Neil, what I know about Ren, you use the word conspiracy. I don't smell any sort of conspiracy. Right? Like I earnestly smell like a football move made by a football coach.
It's boring stuff, Cody, but it sounds quite accurate to what I'm hearing as well. I know that's not what people potentially want to hear. And I've already got some messages with my trying to, clear up the confusion out there and basically say the conspiracy theories are not true with some, are you really buying that, Mike? Like all that. It's like, I mean, again, Ren Baker to a man is not like what people are describing. That's just not how Ren Baker rolls. Even if he wants to force a decision on, he's not going to walk in a room and say, it's you or him right now. Make a decision.
And
that's not how Ren works.
So if we go to baseball, Ren, when Maisie announced he was retiring and Steve Sabins was named the coach in waiting, Ren told us he doesn't like doing that and he didn't want to do it. But Maisie talked him into it.
He was forced upon that because I think we also both can say, and it's been said, that coach in waiting scenario for the baseball program was in the works for like 4 years now. So, and that's preceding Ren. So Ren was open in that press conference to say, this was broached to me when I got hired.
Yeah.
This is at the time was a top 10 program that obviously made a super regional. Like, he could easily have said, out of all the programs, this one's doing the best. I can do a national search and hit a home run here. But instead, Maisie did basically convince him he was open to that. And that's a lot of pressure on Sabins too, because you wonder what leash he's going to get. But that Ren made it clear, this is not my guy. I support Maisie because he's a Hall of Famer here. I'm going to support him, but this is not my guy. Ren is a pretty open AD. You could even argue sometimes to a fault. Like, there's times when we're sitting there talking to him, whether it's a one-on-one or a group presser, and I do say to myself, I think he let that slip.
Yeah.
Like, especially in one-on-one. So I've done a couple of shows with him one-on-one wise. I don't know if you've had one-on-ones, but I think he lets things slip sometimes.
Yeah.
Which you got to like as fans. But yeah, that's just not him. And I do think, as much as Brown, because people hate hearing this too, and I think we both know this to be the case, Brown is a really good guy.
Yeah.
So I truly believe Brown does not like firing somebody.
Yeah.
I truly believe that when Brown had this meeting with Jordan Lesley that he was open with, I'm sure it was not a 5-minute one. I'm sure that they talked about their whole life together. I'm sure Brown said he wishes that didn't have to be the case. I'm sure he tried to make this to where they leave positively. They might have cried and broed it out and hugged. Like, that would not surprise me at all. But I'm also sure that Neil, and you've even heard this from some recent pressers, he's no longer even trying to find an excuse. He goes out there literally and says, yeah, the defense isn't good. I know it's not good. Like, what else you got for me?
Yeah.
Like, he knows. So, like, and he's also a pretty big sports fan. If you ever talk to him off the record, he knows what's going on with, like, the Yankees, Dodgers in the World Series.
Yeah.
Like, he's just a sports fan. So he has ESPN notifications on. So even if he's trying to stay off social media, I'm sure he got the notification from ESPN, like, Neil Brown goes viral for the comment, or there's billboards around Morgantown against Neil Brown, or Pat McAfee says this about Neil Brown. He's going to see that. And if he doesn't, his kids who go to school are going to see it. So he's well aware, even if he doesn't say he is. So all of that went into this decision. But yeah, I do buy that this was Neil Brown's call. And whether in the back of his mind he's thinking, I got to do this to save my job or not, nobody knows that outside of Neil in his brain. But I also think he's well aware that you cannot, even if he's going to stay on and he knows that, maybe that meeting has happened that some are trying to provide a report on, that, like, it's already locked in. I don't think it's locked in, but even if you buy that, I'm sure Neil Brown's surely aware that, like, I can't come back here next year with Jordan Lesley and have this defense allow 30 points a game. Like, I can't do it. Like, you're my friend, but I can't do that.
Right. I saw somebody in the chat said something about losing CJ or Jaheim. And I would say
that there, especially if we lose, meaning if WVU loses CJ or Jaheim, will that? Yeah. So I think he'll put Nico in and move Green to QB2, including special packages, which somebody did ask about playing both of them, and Brown kind of danced around it, especially if we lose CJ or Jaheim. Jaheim got hurt a couple weeks ago, then did play, has been reported as fine. CJ got banged up after previously being fine. Again, there's 2 weeks. I would imagine both would play, but if they don't, does that influence that to you?
Well, so I was just going to say, this kind of goes back to when, we were talking about Neil's a loyal guy.
Yeah.
It's, I would, depending on how the next 4 games go, I would be surprised if we saw somebody like CJ or Jaheim or Garrett or Nico, like, jump ship. Neil struggled with the transfer portal early on, the first 2 or 3 years. They haven't really had a problem with it. And that goes back to, like,
no, not with starters.
Yeah.
Guys who want more playing time.
And it's like, Nico is a 4-star coming out of high school. Why is he content to sit for now a 3rd year? Because he likes Neil, right? Like,
that's part of it. Yeah, I know Rodney Gallagher loves Neil. I know Jaheim loves Neil. I know CJ loves Neil. I reported at the time, and I'll stand by it. Multiple players, and some have now been public with it. So those players I mentioned are part of that group. They would have left or transferred, especially the ones that already were coming in as recruits, like Rodney Gallagher. He was coming out of high school as a 4-star MPA. It was flat out there. He would have decommitted if Brown was fired before 2023. That's how much they love Brown.
So that's what the loyalty gets you. And it's like, let's go even deeper down the depth chart. Why is Jalen Anderson still here, right?
Yeah, 100%. Once Jaheim emerges,
and he's here because Chad Scott's here, and Chad Scott got a promotion, right? And it's like that's kind of the domino effect of Neil's loyal to his coaches, his coaches are loyal to the players they bring in. And it's like that's kind of the trickle down.
Yeah.
That I mean, that's in my opinion, that's what that loyalty gets you is, you know, there hasn't been a transfer portal problem in the last what 2 years at least. Maybe 3.
Yeah, and the last one to really try to like rake the program through the mud when they left was Messidor, and that's
Yeah,
3 years ago. I mean, obviously he did to an incredible level,
yeah,
but that's really the last time. Even the guys that left, were all praising the program.
yeah,
So that's really that, and Woods would be the other one. Like that, since that time, that
yeah,
was really the last time, because that was, if you remember that press conference, Neil Brown, that was when he said that he shut it down.
yeah,
That was the only time I can recall Neil kind of publicly saying this player did not, like, he didn't stay loyal to me. I was loyal to him. He didn't stay loyal to me. That almost felt like Neil Brown was pissed.
yeah,
Like, I was loyal to you, and like
yeah,
you're out there making an announcement on Twitter before we're kicking off a game. So yeah, and that also, I think, also is how, because this, I think, is the annoyance of this year too. People said the prior year that, okay, how are you going to take that next step if you're mostly getting Group of 5 and FCS transfers? And yeah, they got some of them. They got major conference transfers this past year,
yeah,
and they haven't worked out at all. Like, Garnet Hollis has been worse than he was in the Big Ten. He's not been good, but you're getting those guys because you're so popular around. We know it's 2024. If a player is getting an offer from West Virginia in the transfer portal, what are they doing first? They're not talking probably to their family or coaches, and they are going to talk to them. The first order of business probably for those players is, I'm firing a text to my friend who's on the team. How is it there?
yeah.
And if it's bad, I'm not coming. If it's good, what's the NIL like?
Yeah.
And then, like, etc. So yeah, Cody Nespor, Mike Asti here again. Jordan Lesley out as DC at WVU. Bye week still going on. So this provides us some breaking news during the bye week here. Going back to the chat.
Injuries. Garrett's not going to. Garrett's a quarterback. I mean, it's his last year. He's not going to. They're not going to go back to that gimmick stuff with him.
I think him and his family would rather sit if that was the option. If it was like you're the backup or you end up now as the running back slot gimmick guy, I think at that point you just sit down for 3 or 4 games and try to get a UFL contract or something wild.
Plus, Rodney Gallagher's kind of taking that role.
Right. Rodney Gallagher's definitely taken that role, and that role's fine for him. I mean, there's even other players that could do that role. They actually have a decent amount of athletes on that team.
They do now.
Like Preston Fox could probably do that role if you need to do that role. Traylon Ray could probably do that role if you need to do that role. Yeah, that would be wild. I cannot imagine. And Brown, again, this goes back to him as a person. That would be Dick. I think that would be like, I think to even have that conversation, Brown is certainly going to talk to him about, I'm sure there's going to be a meeting from Brown to Green, because he didn't speak to him. That's what he said, at least. Green did not go on the trip to Arizona.
Right.
I'm sure at some point, once they get all back together, Brown's going to sit Green down and be like, look, if you're still my quarterback, the one thing he's doing is not throwing picks. You can't come out here and throw 2 picks in the next game and then have me stick with you. Right. I mean, if I had to predict and put money down, I personally feel like he's going to start Garrett Green against Cincinnati, and then if he's throwing picks left and right, he then would get benched in the middle of the game, which is similar to how he treated JT Daniels. He gave him one more game, and then Green came in the middle of the Oklahoma game, which led to being a win, and then Green was the guy. I think that would be the scenario, and of course, if they win, he's just going to continue on. And then if Brown's back, it'll be Nico next year. Green's out of eligibility. If Brown's not back, then I imagine at that point Nico would transfer, because Brown is his guy. I don't think a new coach is going to be necessarily aligned with Nico, even if Nico's been playing better. So Jordan Lesley is now gone. Do you buy that there has been any, because we have to talk about this too. There's been a website out there from the fans. There are billboards out there from the fans. Neil Brown went viral a couple weeks ago, obviously, off of comments at a press conference. The fans are more fed up than they've been in years, really, since I was a student to now covering professionally. And it almost appears like the fan base is now willing to make a statement of finally not going to games and maybe showing up with a bag over their face and all of that. Like, it could get embarrassing next year, depending on how this year finishes out. Do you believe the fan base at all had any influence to either this decision or can influence a decision on Brown?
So, like I said, Neil's not an idiot. Like, he knows
Yeah.
what's going on. I would doubt. I mean, if you're, I think maybe Ren said this, but like, if the fan bases can't be ads because all they do is pay buyouts.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
So it's like,
they've been getting rid of coaches in the middle of games. Ren Baker
Yeah.
has said that. He's like, I want to fire a coach too when I'm, rooting for the Cowboys. I think
Right.
he's a fan in the NFL, but like, you can't do that as an AD.
Right.
Yeah.
So and if we're going to talk about the billboards for a sec, I think it's so stupid.
It's dumb.
Like, if you
Yeah.
want to make a statement, don't go to the game. Like, empty seats make a statement.
I mean, $50K when they were losing. That's not a bad number. I mean, Pitt is undefeated and got 40, I think, at Acrisure for one of the bigger games in a long time.
So that's how to make a statement to an athletic department. Paying for a billboard,
no,
that doesn't do anything, right? Complaining on Twitter, that doesn't do anything.
No, even though Ren is on Twitter,
right?
But he still doesn't care if he's seeing your tweets.
And it's harder because people are so loyal to WVU that it's even if they're losing, you're going to go.
That's the thing. They don't want to not go. They want to get their way, but still support the team. That is the dichotomy that they're wrestling with right now. 100%.
So, but I think that how to get a message to an athletic department is if the ball kicks off and half the stadium's empty.
Yeah. Or yeah. I mean, I've said this now in 2 shows. Or put a sign up that we have a picture up from one guy. I forget, it might have been the Iowa State game that Kelsey took of Fire Neo Brown. There's one sign there. Get a lot of signs.
Yeah.
I know they wanted to try to do the damn banner. Like, if you're gonna pick between I'll say this. If you got to pick between what's a smarter investment, and they're both wastes of money. Like, if I'm a person and I got some money from my hard work, I'm not putting it in to a billboard, a banner, nor am I probably giving it to the athletic department or Country Road Trust.
Well,
I mean, none of those things. Like, I'm gonna keep my money because I work for it, and you're making the decision. It's not up to me anyway. But the banner is at least better than the billboard because the banner, these games are almost all on national TV. If that banner flies up there and ESPN's covering it, they're going to paint up there. It'll be live then on there. And the billboards, there's been pictures on social media, but I would wonder if Game Day is going to discuss the billboards like they discuss everything else under the sun for WVU with Pat McAfee. Yeah. I don't know. He talked about it already on his show. I don't think they go as far, even though they're up longer. And even a month from now, when the billboard money runs out, that the season's just ending. They could be like, okay, billboards are down. We're going to keep them. Screw you. Like, that doesn't I mean.
Yeah. Well, and you made a good point, Mike, I said empty seats make the statement. The other statement is don't give your money to the guy who's going to fly the plane. Yeah. Just don't give your money to the MAC. Put it in your own pocket.
Put it in your own pocket. Right. Put it in your own pocket.
That also makes a statement to the athletic department. Cancel your donation. Don't donate to CRT. Like, that's how you make a statement.
And if you got to pick one, by the way, before I get any texts from CRT and friends in there, if you got to pick one, I would pick CRT, Country Road, and I'm being serious because number one, Country Road Trust, and I know the rules are adjusting, but as we speak now, it's a separate bank account, it's a separate entity, it is run by a separate CEO. The director of ops, who everyone knows I'm friends with, is not working for WVU. She's working for Country Road Trust. Like, if nobody donates to that, you're going to start putting those people out of jobs. Like, that is an entity that does a lot of great work. I literally had dinner at the GOAT recently. That is literally the first NIL influenced restaurant in the country. That is a genius idea. Their bourbon, their beer, all of that. Other programs can say what they want. Pitt's, North Carolina State's, Penn State's, none of those beers were happening before WVU did theirs. WVU has been very revolutionary in what their NIL is doing. And 247 put out their ranking of the top 30 NILs. This is before the year. This is about a year ago, actually. And WVU, still in the midst of a relatively dark period, and with everybody upset at everyone, they ranked Country Road Trust number 27 in the country. And that is ahead of a lot of programs who are winning more games than WVU right now. Does not mean the athletic department money is straight. It is not. But Country Road Trust is a separate thing that I do think if you want to donate to one of the two, that makes a lot more sense to donate. For me, that would be my pitch to that. But yeah, the other option is just keep your money. Don't, because on the Fire Neo Brown website, they don't link to Country Road Trust. They link to the Mountaineer Athletic Club. I want to make this clear, guys. You could donate to that. And I get you want to maybe help the buyout and think that's going to help the influence. And they've actually raised, I believe, hundreds of thousands of dollars just on that from the link. So that's great if you're that mad. What if they don't fire Neil Brown? You're not getting that money back. Right? You're just out money now. And you didn't get what you wanted, and you're watching the same team that's going to do the same thing. So, yeah, if you got to pick, it's CRT. But I would just donate anywhere. Keep your freaking money. Like, no lawsuit against WVU or Ren Baker for a billboard is going to work. You're going to lose that.
Well, the other thing with CRT is like, you donate to the basketball team, right? Like,
yeah. It doesn't have to
like
go to football.
switch. You know what I mean? Like,
100%. Yeah. And I even during all the Huggins thing, one of the donors, he actually openly, I covered it on the site, and he was like, okay, I'm mad at this, so I'm going to reallocate the money to something else that I like. So yeah, that's fine. You don't, I mean, the 2.5 million that was put in there recently to the program overall, that was to women's basketball. Yep. That's not Neil Brown in football. That's a lot of money to women's basketball, but that they were making it clear that, hey, we want to go here. They were just in the NCAA tournament. You get some wins and we'll give you here. So, sure. So A over here says that I think there's a chance Nico stays if Brown goes only if the new coach wants to keep him, and obviously depends on who the new coach is. Nico leaves WVU, and I think WVU would rally around Nico. I'm going to ask it this way, Cody, for you, because everybody also knows a lot of recruiting is not the head coach. A lot of recruiting is the assistant doing the work, even though players do come in a lot of the time for who the head coach is, and that relationship does make sense. If Neil Brown is removed and is not back for whatever reason, whether they're losing, whether they get the money, whether they just want to move on, whether Jimbo Fisher calls and says, I'll do it for free, like whatever the reason being, how much of the roster that we were talking about that has been so loyal and has stuck around and led to the 9-win season, the Jaheim Whites, who has 2 more years of eligibility, the Traylon Rays, those guys that can come back and would be coveted by other schools around the country, what do you think that looks like? How many of them come back and stay, or do you think it's a mass exodus where they're all aligned with Brown and they would throw up the release on social and say, we appreciate the view, but we got to move on too?
Yeah, I just kind of assume nowadays that like when a coach gets fired, like basically the whole roster is just going to get in the portal, at least just to see.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, you mentioned Traylon Ray, like you're absolutely right. He would go to another Power 5. So like jump in the portal, see who offers you what kind of money and go.
Yeah, he definitely would. Yeah, you can debate Hudson Clement or whoever else, but Traylon Ray would 100%.
But that's like, the guys that would stay would be, the guys further down the depth chart that don't have tape. They would probably hop in the portal, and then I assume, probably if they don't have good tape out there.
But new coach might not want those guys.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
I mean, they might do the Dion thing and be like, walk in there with a Louis bag and be like, you need to, get out of town because you're not good enough for me, especially if it's a coach with any kind of clout at all, even if it's not.
So but I mean, the rosters are so fluid now. I just assume a coaching change is like, you're not going to have the same team.
And you bring your guy, like hypothetically, and I'm not reporting this, but like if Sinetti would come after the year he had at Indiana because it's WVU ties, he's going to bring his team that just won games that has eligibility left and be like, now you're coming to West Virginia.
And his assistants.
And it's I mean, look at Darren DeVries. Drake was a tournament team. His son, he comes and his son has 1 year left. Come with me. You're coming with me to play in the Big 12. So he's coming with him. That was almost a package deal. Yeah, that's a very common thing. I would expect that too, and I'm already dreading the frustration and how my Christmas will be if literally this news pops. I get an email and then it's like I'm on social media 24/7 because it's just one announcement after the other announcement after the other. That is likely what the scenario would be, and as you mentioned, I think also what it would be. And Cody, I would even advise them if I had to. You can enter the portal and test the waters and then come back.
Yeah.
So what you should do if there's a new coach is you enter the portal, you see what people think of you. Traylon Ray is a guarantee, but if you're Hudson Clement and you previously weren't a scholarship guy, I would jump in and then see what the value is. You don't know. And then if you don't like it, you can talk to the new coach, whoever gets hired, and be like, what do you think of me? And if he gives you a positive report, cool. If not, then you need to go wherever you can get. But you got 30 days. I mean, that's a decent amount of time. So that could be a thing too. Yeah, I think a lot of the big deal players leave after he gets fired. I think that makes sense. Some people do think no matter what, he won't be going anywhere, even if they lose out. There are people with that opinion that he just won't be going anywhere. We will see. I also think, knowing Ren, that regardless of money or whatever, they can get an influx if necessary. They also will lose a chance at influx if they just keep on and they end up with a 4-win year. And I do think Ren wants to win. I don't think he's just there as a businessman. Like, he's great with money, but he does want to win. So if they lose out, I would think Ren would have to make a tough decision then and would just have to figure out the money. Or I'd be surprised if they lose out. But if maybe they win 3, they have to make a decision. Anything else for you on the Lesley decision, how this impacts WVU, anything at all here? I mean, obviously, breaking news, for anyone just tuning in, Jordan Lesley has now been fired. That's the number one with Neil Brown. Do you think there's any chance that Brown could get fired mid-season still? There's 4 games left. If they lose by 30 to Cincinnati, do they make that decision?
No, I mean, no, not really.
I don't think so either.
Because are you going to – would you – would you fire him with like 1 game left? Like, what would
we've seen it throughout the country before.
I know,
it's not a Brent Baker thing, but it's happened.
That's like maybe like if it's really bad and you just want to get a head start on the coaching carousel.
That's true.
Like maybe
we've seen a couple coaches get fired already.
Yeah, so that would be my only, like, if they look terrible the next 3 weeks,
right?
And it's like the writing's on the wall, maybe then. But that
at least before the bowl. Like, I don't think Brown would coach the bowl. If they lose out or they only win 2 games, I would imagine if they're going to fire Brown, he wouldn't coach the bowl game.
Yeah.
And then what you could probably do is, because I know we both know Ren's going to take his long time for this coaching search. It's going to be a month plus. What they probably would do in that scenario is, if they're still bowl eligible, because only 2 more wins, they're going to get picked for a bowl, that somebody on the staff would coach the bowl game then. You'd have that. That happens constantly around the country. So, and I don't know. I mean, maybe now it would be Jeff Coons. I don't think in any way it would be Chad Scott. He's not ready for that. I always thought Matt Moore would be a guy that would be the interim head coach if they had to promote within, because of the title that you mentioned. But titles mean nothing based on what the decision so far. So, like, I'm not so confident that it's going to be Matt Moore, even though he's got looks from Troy and other places.
Yeah.
What do you think Jordan Lesley's future looks like? Because I don't know if you saw the reports. He interviewed with Troy for their head coaching job before this season.
Oh, yeah.
So my point is that going into this year, after Beanie Bishop and the success of 2023, the perception nationally, he didn't get the job, but the perception nationally was his previous resume is good. They now did okay. They won the brawl on defense. He was okay value-wise. I don't know what it is now, because everyone's watched how the defense has been so bad. Either recruiting or the on-field scheme, something's not going right for Jordan Lesley. He even actually got hit on the sideline. It's been a horrendous year for him. What do you think his future looks like, though, post West Virginia? And now, if Neil Brown is back, he will have his first go of it in a decade without Neil Brown, his boy, protecting him.
Yeah. I think he lands as a defensive line coach somewhere.
Okay.
Maybe he gets a G5 coordinator job. But like I mean, he's
a good D-line coach.
Well, I was gonna say he has a really good resume as a defensive line coach. So that's, I mean,
like a big job. Like, do you think like Georgia says you can be our D-line coach?
Not Georgia.
Like, okay, not Georgia, but like a job of note. Where like if you're taking a lower job, he wouldn't be a DC there. But like if you take a D-line coach job or even a consultant job at a behemoth of a program, is that possible or?
Yeah, I think we see that all the time. The coaches, they get smaller roles, go back to their roots, and then see what happens. Like, he won't be a coordinator at a Power 5 school next year. Right?
No. But it had to be a D-line. It had to be D-line. Yeah.
Like if he pops up at, if he's the Texas Tech defensive line coach, that's not,
or if nothing else, he's DC at Troy. Probably they'd move things around and he'd be DC at Troy. I mean, if nothing else, like if that would be the decision he's probably making right now is, number one, do I just want to just sit on money? Do I want to be a D-line coach at a better program and probably maybe have a chance at being in the playoff? But like, it's a D-line job. I'm not the DC. No one's talking to me. No one's going to give me any credit for anything. Or do I want to be freaking DC at Troy? Because they probably would move the earth for him there. So like that, or a program like Troy, but I mean, Troy is just riddled with West Virginia connections at this point now. So that's another thing. Like if you're a player too, you probably can always get there. Brown's going to make a call for you.
Yeah.
So we've seen that before as well. So I don't see too much, and I also don't think we're talking about Lesley falling to like FCS level or anything here. I mean, it obviously did not work in West Virginia, but people are getting a little crazy with some slander out there. His D line resume was fine, and the D line with all the injuries, you could argue has been okay this year with their pass rush and all of that. The problem is the secondary.
Yeah,
that's what he should have said. Like, when you're going to make me DC, make the D line as part of my title, make it /D line. Don't mess with this secondary BS because that ain't working.
Yeah. He was, what was his, before this year, he was outside linebackers.
Before this year.
Coordinator. And then this year.
Because Coons was inside backers.
Yeah, and then this year he's moved to just defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, officially, yeah.
Yeah. But coaches have long shelf lives, especially like kind of low profile assistant coaches.
And he's still young. He's still young guys.
Yeah, I mean like
Nia Brown's young too. Yeah.
Like, how many people in the country know Jordan Lesley's name and have a negative perception of him outside of West Virginia?
Yeah, that's true.
Like,
you're by the way, so defensive line coach initially, co-defensive coordinator in defensive line 2020, and then defensive line or then defensive coordinator / outside backers, which it says to present, but you also are correct that this year it's just defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
So the website is a little bit late from some of those titles. Anything else on this or anything else, I guess, you want to get off your chest on this? We can kind of close up shop here. This didn't go as long as I thought maybe some lives would go. We had a lot of action, but it's kind of dipping out a little bit, so we don't have to linger.
No, I mean, I don't think there's really anything else until Neil talks next week.
Yeah.
And kind of sheds a little bit of light. Basketball on Monday.
Basketball on Monday. That'll be another. Yeah, we will do a Mountaineer Report with basketball season coming up there. Yes, Cody's going to definitely help us with some basketball coverage to replace Ethan. There's some big shoes to fill to replace Ethan Bach. Certainly at the Coliseum more than anything else. I think that was a disappointment. Like, I'm not going to see you there. He was definitely a kind of local celebrity at the games at the Coliseum. So we're obviously Monday, and it's going to be a big freaking day Monday actually for WVU Sports Now. Monday is when they open the year. Robert Morris, that should be. You'll figure out whether they're better or not, because as long as they don't lose the bye games, they're at least better than last year. And what this team actually looks like outside of an exhibition and a secret scrimmage, and that'll be right after Nia Brown got to talk about this. And I'll ask about it if nobody else. I mean, it'll be asked about. Myself and many will be asking about it. It'll definitely be discussed.
Yeah.
And I'll give him a question that's not about the quarterbacks because he thinks that's all I ask about. But that'll also be discussed. So, and I would imagine that he will still not announce the QB then, but he'll have to talk about this. So you'll at least hear some clarity on this decision, and he'll want it out of the way before any more prep for the Cincinnati game. Obviously, this is a much longer Mountaineer Report than normal, so anyone who's just listening on the podcast, I'm going to apologize here. This was a live that I'm going to make a podcast, so if you don't want this long for a pod, I hear you. All the other Mountaineer Reports are about 15, 20 minutes. We will give you one about basketball at some point, whether it be before that game or after that game or something thereof. We got a lot, actually, with Ethan the last 3 or 4 shows, a lot about the basketball programs, and I say that plural, because there's 2 of them, and the women's program just made the tournament and lost to Caitlin Clark and has a preseason top 25. So we give them some love as well, and we'll also have coverage of them as well. But that'll do it for this breaking news live edition here of Mountaineer Report. Cody Nespor back with us at WVU Sports Now. Mike Asti. That will do it. Jordan Lesley out. Nia Brown still there. Billboards still up. And the fan base still very much asinine and divided.